In this world, people can receive epic skills by eating the fruit of the skill tree, so if you're lucky, you might become a firebender or maybe even a sword saint. But when it comes to Light, all he became was a nutting master. On the day they were meant to get their skills, Light and his childhood friend Lena were on their way to the church to begin the ceremony, and they are excitedly talking about what skills they hope to receive. Light has always wanted to become an adventurer, so he would be happy with any combat type skill, but Lena doesn't really care what skill she gets as long as she can spend time with Light. Still, she's a bit nervous since no one really knows what kind of skill they'll get until they eat the fruit, but Light is sure they'll both get amazing skills. However, we already know how that turned out for him. When he and Lena went into the church that day, the Holy Sister told them all about how the skill fruits work. You're granted a skill once you eat the fruit, and it will guarantee you a job in any related field of your choice, all without any crippling student loan debt. They are allowed to pick any one of these fruits to get their skill, but there is a rule that they can't break no matter what. You're only allowed to eat one skill fruit over the course of your entire life, because if you try to eat a second, they'll poison you. A lot of people have ended up dying because didn't like their skill and tried to eat a second fruit, so the Holy Sister wants to make it very clear that eating more than one has a 100% fatality rate. Lena is shocked to hear that the fruits are so dangerous, but the Holy Sister assures her that as long as she doesn't eat a second fruit, then she'll be perfectly fine. With the warnings out of the way, the Holy Sister tells them to begin selecting their fruit, so Lena steps up first. She takes a bite out of one of the fruits, and she immediately feels something happening to her body. There's a blinding light, and Lena's body suddenly becomes very hot, so the Holy Sister realizes that this must be the legendary Sword Saint skill. It is incredibly rare, so she never thought she would get to see someone acquire it in person. But now that Lena is officially a Sword Saint, she is destined to become one of the greatest adventurers in the country. Light is really happy for Lena, so he congratulates her on her amazing skill. But it's his turn next, so he steps up to the altar and picks a skill fruit for himself. He knows he probably won't get something as good as the Sword Saint skill, but he's still hoping to acquire a decent combat skill, so he can fight by Lena's side. However, as he takes a bite and the skill flows into his body, he's disappointed to hear that he's just a nut master. The sister tries to be as supportive as she can, but yeah, the only fighting Light's going to be doing is against the pests out in the field. Light is devastated that his dreams of being an adventurer have been ruined, so he asks if he can try again, but the sister was very clear about the 100% fatality rate, so she's not letting him eat another fruit. Lena tries to cheer Light up and tells him she'll stay in the village and grow fruits with him since she doesn't care what she does as long as they are together. But the Holy Sister won't stand for all this love and compassion BS. Lena's Sword Saint skill is a once-in-a-decade marvel, so she's not going to let her waste that talent by becoming a farmer. She demands that Lena become an adventurer for the sake of this country, and in fact, she'll be taking her to the royal capital immediately so she can begin her training there. Lena doesn't have the guts to refuse the Holy Sister's demands, so she gets dragged off, but she promises to come back for Light someday. 3 months have passed since that fateful day, and Light is trying to make the best of his situation by leaning into his role as a farmer. He uses his powers to make the nuts grow nice and big, and when they are ripe, he sells them for profit in town. So his life isn't so bad as long as he pushes those intrusive thoughts to the back of his head. Anyway, he heads into town to sell his nuts, but since his nuts are so small, he gets paid very little for them. As he is walking back to his house, he notices a poster with some news about Lena. She's apparently been promoted to S rank in the 3 months since she left the village and is doing incredibly well for herself. Of course, he is happy for her, but hearing about how well she's doing just makes him feel like an absolute failure. Even though he knows that he doesn't have the skill to become an adventurer, Light has been training every day in hopes that he might naturally unlock a sword skill or something. He repeatedly strikes at a tree stump, and he believes that if he can split it in half with a sword, then he will be strong enough to become an adventurer by his own merit. However, hard work doesn't always pay off, so the only thing he got from all that training were some bruised wrists. He falls to the floor in defeat and begins wondering if Lena still remembers him. She said she would come back for him, but with all the fame and fortune she has acquired, he wouldn't be shocked if she had forgotten his name and his face altogether. Just then, a little girl named Ayla walks up to Light and says she brought him a cup of water. She's pretty much an orphan, and the village chief didn't want to deal with her, so he kind of just left her on Light's doorstep one day. Light saw that she had nowhere to go, so he decided to take her in, and the two have been living together ever since. Ayla tells him she's done with dinner, so if he wants to, he can come inside to eat, and Light happily obliges. He takes his first bite of the food, and while he eats, Ayla asks him how today's harvest went. Overall, Light says today's profits were pretty good, especially since he started focusing on growing skill fruits recently. And by the way, he separated all the skill fruits into those boxes clearly marked with skull emojis, so under no circumstances should Ayla eat any of those. Ayla hadn't realized that the skill fruits were dangerous to eat, so Light's warning is really helpful. Or at least it might have been an hour ago, because he used a bunch of those fruits to make the stew they are eating right now. Light gets up in a panic and asks if she is sure she put skill fruits in the stew, but definitely did, and from what the Holy Sister said, eating a second skill fruit is a guaranteed death sentence. All of a sudden, Light's body begins to feel hot, and he feels a pain in his chest, so he believes this is how he will die. He falls to the floor, and in his final breath, he apologizes to Alia because this is his fault for expecting her to understand the labels where she doesn't know how to read yet. However, as he lies there and awaits death, Light realizes death is taking an awfully long time, so he sits up, and to his surprise, he's perfectly fine. Ayla sees the confused expression on Light's face, so she asks him if he's fine, but that's exactly why he's confused. He ate a second skill fruit which should have been fatal, so why and how is he still alive? Just then, he gets a piercing headache and feels the power of a new skill rushing into his body. Just then, Ayla starts to feel a sharp pain in her body as well, and since she ate the stew, that must mean she's about to acquire a skill as well. All of a sudden, Ayla is able to see words floating in front of Light and reads out the info of his Nut Master skill. In addition to the ability to grow nuts, Light's skill also makes him immune to all nut poisons. Light is shocked and asks Ayla how she knows this, so she tells him she can see words floating in the air, and Light realizes she must have acquired some sort of appraisal skill. Ayla keeps reading Light's information and sees that he has a second skill now, so she tells him that he possesses an ability called Sword God. The Sword God skill greatly increases the Light's attack power when he's holding a sword, as well as greatly increasing his magic resistance. If what Ayla said is true, then this might mean that his dream can finally come true, so Light wants to test it out for himself. He runs outside with his sword and goes back into the forest to see if he really has a new sword skill. He raises his sword, and with a single swing, he slashes the tree stump in half, as well as that of the bigger tree behind it, so it's safe to say that as of this moment, Light is OP. The next day, he heads out into town so he can go to the guild and finally become an adventurer. He is really excited since he has always dreamed of coming here, and the first thing he spots is the notice board full of bounty quests. If they successfully complete a quest, then they'll be able to buy new equipment and tasty food, but making money isn't the only reason Light came here today. He wants to figure out how much his Sword God skill will actually help him in battle, and if it goes well for him, then he might be able to become an official adventurer. He tells Ayla to sit on a bench and wait for him while he gets a quest at the front desk, and while he's gone, Ayla takes the opportunity to use her appraisal skill on all the people in the guild. She's amazed by all the different types of skills that exist, but she is also shocked by how useless some of them are, like this guy who has a self-damaging skill. Just then, she hears a commotion over by the front desk, so she looks over and finds Light in the middle of an argument with one of the adventurers in the guild. The man recognizes Light as the guy who's always selling his nuts in the market, so he mocks him and says a loser like him doesn't belong in the guild, but Light completely ignores him and just tells Ayla that they can leave now. The guy is offended that Light would dare to ignore him, so his completely normal reaction is to attack the Light with his sword. Light's Sword God skill also improves his reflexes, so he was easily able to block the attack, but the guy had no idea Light could do that, so he fully intended to catch a murder charge today. The guy's friends see that Light is capable of defending himself, so they convince Jean to just walk away because this isn't a fight he can win. Jean tries to play off his outburst and claims he never really intended to hurt Light, so he and his friends leave the guild to go on their first mission, and shortly after Light and Ayla leave as well since Light has gotten a quest for them. They head out into the rocky plains, and Light is really excited since he might finally get to see a monster in person. But this place is dangerous, so he tells Ayla to stay close to him. They soon spot their target, and it's that slime monster over in the distance, so Light prepares himself to fight it. He cautiously approaches in an attempt to sneak up on it, but the slime notices him anyway, so Light goes for a full frontal assault instead. He is a lot stronger than he used to be, so when he charges at the slime, he slices it in half and accidentally splits the ground in the process. He's happy that his skill really is useful in battle, but he's going to have to work on his power management so he doesn't cause any more collateral damage. Ayla congratulates Light on his first successful quest, but to complete the quest, they need to cut the slime up and bring the parts back to the guild so they can exchange it for money. Ayla says she feels kinda bad about cutting the slime's body up, but Light reminds her that they'll earn enough money for pizza if they sell the slime parts, so Ayla throws her morals out the window and begins dissecting the slime. Just then, they hear someone yelling on the other side of the plains, so they rush over and find Jean and his party being attacked by a huge ogre. They intentionally picked an easy quest so they could just kill a slime and go home, but they never expected to run into an ogre. The orc swings at them, and they all jump out of the way, but even if they manage to dodge that first attack, they stand no chance of winning against that thing. Light calls over to them to ask if they are alright, and as soon as Jean spots him, he comes up with a plan to escape. He and his friends start running straight at Light, and Light is a bit confused by what they are doing, but then they run past him, and he realizes they are trying to use him as bait so they can flee. The ogre now intends to attack Light, so he has no choice but to fight it, and in fact, this works out well for him, since he needs to test the limits of his new skill. The ogre swings its mace at him, so Light jumps to the side to evade it, but he's playing a risky game, so Ayla warns him that his sword god skill doesn't increase his defense, meaning if he gets hit even once, he's going to die. Even with the threat of dying, Light still refuses to back down from this fight since he's going to become the world's greatest adventurer, and if he plans to accomplish that goal, he needs to overcome this challenge. He has finally gotten used to his body's new strength, so Light jumps into the air, and as the ogre tries to strike him, he slashes its mace in half. No matter what it takes, he will make sure he catches up to Lena so the two of them can be together again. So in one swift motion, he brings his sword down and cuts the ogre cleanly in half, all while Jean and his friends watch from a nearby hill. A little while later, Light returns to the guild to exchange his items for money, but the receptionist finds it hard to believe that he managed to defeat an ogre all by himself. As proof, Light shows her the ogre horn he brought back, and on top of that, Jean's friends say they saw the whole thing, so they can guarantee that Light is telling the truth. The receptionist believes him, so she asks him to wait a minute so she can get his reward, and in the meantime, Jean's friends thank Light again for saving them. Just then, a crowd forms at the front of the guild, so Light asks if something happened, and Jean informs him that the S-rank party has just returned. This happens to be the S-rank party that Lena joined, and this is the first time he has seen her in the last 3 months, so Light goes up to her and tries to say hello. But in response, Lena says, "I've never met this man before in my life." Light is devastated and can't believe Lena actually forgot about him after only 3 months, so he's just standing there with his mouth wide open. Ayla has no idea what's wrong, so she tries to cheer him up and suggests they should go get some pizza together. Light does take Ayla to get some pizza, but he's still acting depressed, so Ayla threatens to eat all the pizza if he doesn't snap out of it soon. Light spent a lot of money on this pizza, so even if he's upset about Lena, there's no way he's letting it go to waste. However, he ate so fast that he ends up choking, but luckily, someone hands him a glass of water to wash it down. He looks up to thank the helpful stranger, but to his surprise, the stranger turns out to be Lena. He's about to yell her name, but Lena covers his mouth and tells him to be quiet, otherwise Grouse is going to hear them. She sits down at the table, and Ayla introduces herself since this is the first time she has actually met Lena. Lena is about to ask how Light got a kid in just 3 months, but before that, Light asks her what she's doing here. To be honest, Lena was wondering the same thing about Light because she never expected to see him at the guild, so Light proudly explains that he and Ayla became adventurers. He then explains what happened with the whole skill fruit incident, allowing him to acquire a second skill, and Lena seems genuinely happy for him since this means he can finally achieve his dream. Light then asks Lena and how her time with the S-rank party Sacred has been so far, but from Lena's expression, it doesn't seem like it's been much fun. She's basically just being forced to fight with a bunch of random people that the Holy Sister selected. The pay is great, but the atmosphere is more toxic than a Call of Duty lobby, so she advises Light to stay away from Sacred if he wants to enjoy his time as an adventurer. Light still doesn't understand what's so bad about Sacred since he has heard so many good things about them, but Lena recalls an incident 2 months ago when their party was up against a giant serpent. Serpents are weak to fire, so Grouse ordered the mage to blast the serpent. However, the mage went overboard and also set fire to a nearby farm, but when Lena tried to point it out so they could stop the fire, Grouse couldn't care less about destroying a random nobody's farm. Their job was to kill the serpent, and they killed the serpent, so there's no need to concern themselves with pointless things like collateral damage as long as the job gets done. She tried explaining the situation to the Holy Sister as well, but she cared about it even less than Grouse did. She doesn't care how much property is destroyed or how many peasants are killed as long as history remembers them as heroes. She doesn't tell Light about the twisted views of her party, but Light can tell that she's unhappy with them, so he invites her to join him and Ayla if she wants. However, as much as Lena would love that, there are circumstances that prevent her from quitting Sacred. She tells Light she's fine, but he can clearly see her crying, so he knows something must be wrong. However, Lena doesn't want to drag him into her mess, so she leaves the table. A little while later, Light goes to the front desk to pick up his reward for killing the ogre, and he is given 10,000 gold pieces, which is more money than he has ever even seen. However, he isn't excited at all despite it. He is really worried about Lena, but he can't help her, unless he knows what Sacred is forcing her to do, and she won't tell him directly. Since that's the case, Ayla says he can just ask the party leader, Grouse, personally since the door to his lounge is wide open. Inside the lounge, Grouse is currently sitting with two ladies and telling them stories about his legendary battles. For instance, he tells them about his most recent battle where he and his party were hunting an evil grizzly, and to take care of it, they torched a bear with a massive inferno before Grouse delivered the finishing blow. Just then, the receptionist comes in because she has something to talk to Grouse about regarding his recent mission. The people from the village where he found the evil grizzly have lodged a complaint against him, saying that the fire attack that Sacred used caused their reservoir to dry up completely, so now they have no water. Grouse immediately dismisses the complaint and makes up an excuse, saying that a little collateral damage is inevitable when dealing with such powerful monsters. But secretly, he actually enjoys causing problems for the weaklings because he thinks they are beneath him. Light overhears the whole conversation and he is enraged by what he hears because he knows Lena would never disregard the problems of regular people like that. He demands that Grouse let Lena leave Sacred because she is clearly suffering, but Grouse doesn't take him seriously and just calls security over to have Light removed from the lounge. Ayla rushes over to Lost's side to ask if he's alright, and Lost is fine, but the other adventurers warn him that it's a bad idea to antagonize Grouse because he may be a jerk, but angering him will get you on the Holy Sister's bad side, and if she's got a grudge against you, then it's safe to say that your adventuring career is over. Later the next day, all the members of Sacred meet up in the lounge, and they are busy basking in their own greatness, but Lena thinks back to what Light told her about quitting Sacred if it was making her so upset. So she finally works up the courage and declares to everyone that she wants to live by her moral code as an adventurer, which is why she is leaving Sacred, effective immediately. She then starts walking towards the exit, but before she could leave, Grouse dashes in front of her and threatens to kill her for daring to defy him. Lena is about to draw her sword or defend herself, but she realizes that even with her sword Saint's skill, it would still be impossible for her to defeat Grouse in one-on-one combat, so she is forced to submit and takes her hand off her blade. Grouse then backhands her to the floor and begins a half-hearted speech about how she should persevere for the sake of all the people their party will save in the future. And she's going to have to keep persevering till the day she dies in battle. That same day, the Sacred Party is set to leave the town, and Lena has resigned herself to a life of being forced to work under Grouse. However, as they are leaving town, their path is blocked by Light. Grouse asks what Light is standing in their way, so Light declares that he is here to get his friend. He tells Lena that he and Ayla were planning to go hunt some monsters, and they would love to have her with them. After all, they made a promise to one another that they would become adventurers together, and he intends to keep that promise. Lena remembers the promise, and she would love to go with Light, but she doesn't have the strength to go against Grouse, so she asks Light to just leave her alone before he gets hurt. Since Lena has rejected Light's offer, Grouse tries to get him to go away, but Light hasn't given up yet. Instead, he declares that he wants to have a duel with Grouse for Lena's freedom. Grouse initially rejects the duel since he has no reason to fight a random nobody, but then Light taunts him by asking if he is scared of losing to a nobody, and Grouse couldn't let such public disrespect slide, so he ends up agreeing to Light's duel and plans to make an example out of him. But he sets a stipulation that when Light loses, he will be banned from the Adventurers Guild forever, and he will never set foot in the city again. Light agrees to those terms, but Lena tries to convince him to back out since she doesn't think he can win against Grouse in a sword fight. Grouse draws his sword and prepares to attack, but before he does, Ayla scans him and warns Light that Grouse possesses the Godspeed skill. This ability allows him to close the distance with his opponent almost instantly, so he needs to be careful about that. Light readies his sword as well, but to keep things fair, he announces that his skills are Nutmaster and Sword God. However, Grouse doesn't believe him since there's no way anyone could possibly have two skills. Grouse then closes the distance instantly to attack, and Light could barely see the attack coming, but he does manage to block it. Grouse then repeatedly strikes at Light, and Light is forced into a defensive position because he can't keep up with all of Grouse's attacks. He eventually creates some distance, but that distance is short-lived because Grouse appears behind him and knees him in the side. No matter where on the battlefield, as long as it is within range, Grouse can appear there in an instant, so there are no safe spaces for Light here. Light admits that Grouse is insanely tough, but he refuses to give up, so he charges in to attack. Unfortunately, Grouse dodges just before his attack hits, and while Light is off balance, he destroys his sword. With Light's sword destroyed, this battle is pretty much over anyway, but Grouse is feeling generous today, so he tells Lena that he will spare Light if she swears her undying loyalty to him for the rest of her life. However, Light tells Lena that she doesn't have to worry because he will find a way to win this match. Light may have been losing up till now, but Lena chooses to put her faith in him and trusts that he can win this battle no matter what. Grouse is getting sick of all this disrespect, so he plans to kill Light with his next attack. Light still doesn't have a sword though, so he looks around for a replacement and decides to borrow a broom from one of the spectators. Grouse thinks Light is mocking him, and he's kind of right since Light could have easily borrowed Lena's sword instead. Still, Light has full confidence that he can defeat Grouse with this broomstick. So he begins envisioning it as a sword and prepares for Grouse's attacks. So far, he has been falling behind because he keeps looking at Grouse's movements, but his sword god skill gives him incredible reflexes. So this time, he's just going to go with the flow and attack when the time is right. Thanks to Light's change in strategy, his body is able to react the second Grouse gets within range, so he uses the broom to smack his face so hard that he gets sent flying into a brick wall. Grouses are cold, so Light is officially the winner of their duel. And just to make the point clear, Light turns to the other members of Sacred and tells them that if they come after Lena again, then they will have to deal with him. He then turns to Lena and tells her that she is finally free, so once again he invites her to join his party, and Lena happily accepts. A week has passed since Light's duel with Grouse, and not much has changed since he's still growing his nuts, but now he has Lena by his side, so he's much happier. Lena made lunch for everyone, and while they eat, she asks Light about the injuries he sustained while fighting Grouse. Light is feeling great now and can finally join Lena out on a mission, so this would normally be his dream come true, but there is still one problem. Every so often, Lena gets a visitor sent by the Holy Sister, and for the past week, he's been trying to get Lena to come to meet with her so they can discuss her decision to leave Sacred. But Lena says there's nothing to discuss because there's nothing that can make her change her mind. Unfortunately, since they've earned the scorn of the Holy Sister, they are now being targeted, and as such, when they go to the guild to pick out a quest, they are only offered the worst jobs available, like killing sewer rats. These jobs pay very little, so finances are going to be tough, but Lena doesn't seem upset since this allows her to actually help people, like helping rebuild destroyed homes, clearing out the sewers, or finding a missing cat. By the end of the day, they only made 100 coins. That's barely enough for 3 pizzas. But even if their pay is low, Lena is much happier now that she gets to really make people happy, and Light is having more fun than ever before. Meanwhile, over in the Holy Sisters Cathedral, she informs her assistant that she intends to give Lena's new party a real job soon, but this one is S rank, so it's one of the most difficult jobs out there, and she may or may not be hoping that Light gets killed in the process. The next day, Light and the others travel out to the Montes Valley to complete their latest quest, but there's so much fog that Light can barely tell where they are going. He asks Lena if this is the right place, and according to the map she's holding, they should be arriving up to the mansion soon. In the next moment, Light's horse nearly bucks him off because they've arrived at the mansion, and there's no way the horse can get all the way down there. Earlier that day, when Light and the others were heading into the guild to pick out their next quest, they'd found the receptionist waiting because she had a special quest for them. She is glad that Lena's party is here and asks that they accept the quest since they need to resolve it as soon as possible for everyone's safety. But there isn't much information available regarding the quest, and she doesn't even know what could be causing it. It all started when an adventuring party that had been headed to the northern Montes Valley suddenly disappeared while on a quest, and every time they send adventurers out to investigate, they end up disappearing as well. What's even more concerning is the fact that A and B rank adventurers have gone missing in that valley, so whatever is causing it must be incredibly strong. The receptionist hands the group a list of the adventurers who had gone missing, and to Lena's horror, she knows these guys. They were the people who taught her everything she knows about adventuring when she was first starting out, so she's really worried about their safety. The only clue they have is the fact that all the adventurers that went missing first stopped at the home of the former Count of Montes. Count Montes is a man who amassed a fortune through adventuring and settled down in the area. There's no record of what skill Montes may have possessed, but the Count himself died over 30 years ago, so his mansion has fallen to ruin. Anyway, the mission for Lena's party is to find the missing adventurers, as well as determine the cause of all the disappearances. Lena is hesitant to agree to this job since even A and B rank adventurers went missing without a trace, but on the other hand, Light seems really excited because he has always wanted to visit the Montes Valley. Plus, this job will actually earn them a decent reward, so even Ayla is on board since it means more pizza for her. The receptionist is just now noticing that Ayla is here, so she asks Light if he really intends to take her along with him on the quest. Light tells the receptionist that Ayla is a very dependable appraiser, so it's essential for her to accompany him on quests, but that statement raises even more questions, since kids as young as Ayla shouldn't have skills yet. Light explains that she accidentally ate a skill fruit a while ago, but she didn't die or anything, so everything's fine. With that said, the group turns to start heading to the Montes Valley, and that brings us back to the present. The group is currently scaling the side of the mountain, and that's a pretty long drop, so Light asks Ayla to be extra careful. Looking at the size of that mansion, Light finds it hard to believe that someone could afford such a thing solely from adventuring. But Lena doesn't think it's all that strange since she has only been an adventurer for a couple of months, but she already saved up enough money to buy a house. Light hadn't thought about it before, but now he wants to build a huge house like this so he can grow his nuts and train as much as he wants. Ayla gets excited and says she wants to build a candy house for herself, but all that excitement must have affected her common sense because she decides to jump for joy on the ledge. As soon as she lands, the ledge crumbles beneath her feet and she is sent falling to her doom. However, thanks to his quick reaction speed, Light is able to grab onto her hand, but he ends up falling over the edge as well. Lena tries to pull them back up, but unfortunately, she gets dragged down too, so they all fall down. As they are falling, Light realizes he has to do something before they end up going splat, so he comes up with the idea to take out his sword and use it to slash the air. This maneuver creates enough wind pressure to slow their descent, so they all manage to land in one piece. However, just because they survived the fall doesn't mean they are safe since Lena and Ayla soon realize that they've been surrounded. Light doesn't seem too bothered since he's sure he can handle whatever kind of monsters these are, so he charges forward and slashes one of the monsters in half. Light was right about the monsters being easy to defeat, but Lena and Ayla realize that these are no ordinary monsters. Now that they mention it, Light pauses for a moment to take a proper look at the monsters, and to his horror, he realizes that they are all adventurers. Ayla uses her appraisal skill on them and informs the others that the adventurers were all turned into undead after they got bitten. And all the undead adventurers still possess the same skills they had back when they were alive, so she urges Light and Lena to be careful when dealing with them. Meanwhile, Light is in the middle of a major moral dilemma because he can't come to terms with the fact that the monster he was so excited to slay used to be a human just like him. He gets so distracted that he nearly gets bitten by one of the undead, but before that could happen, Lena steps in and slices it in half. She can understand why Light would be hesitant about fighting the undead, but at the same time, it is their duty as adventurers to put their former comrades to rest. Light understands what she's saying, so he agrees to fight, but for now they have to retreat into the mansion since there's a chance that there might be survivors in there. Unfortunately, as they open the front door, they find even more undead adventurers inside. Lena runs out ahead to clear a path and slices through a bunch of the undead, and Light is impressed by Lena's monster knowledge since she is switching attack strategies depending on her opponent. Undead monsters that still look human can be killed by stabbing them through the heart, while the ones that look like skeletons need to have their spines severed. It takes a lot of skill to be able to precisely attack like she is, so even though Light's Sword God skill is technically stronger than Lena's Sword Saint skill, she still outclasses him in a fight. However, even if he's not as skilled as Lena, that doesn't mean he's going to stand around and let her do all the work, so he draws his sword and begins charging towards the undead. He begins cutting through the undead monsters as well, but while he's doing well against them, he completely forgets that Ayla has no fighting skills, so stepping away leaves her vulnerable to attack. An undead sneaks up behind her and is about to strike, but just before she could be hit, Lena dashes forward and stabs the undead through the gaps in its armor, killing it in one blow. Once the undead disintegrates, Lena asks Ayla if she's okay, and Ayla begins praising her for being so cool, and Lena feels really flattered, but she can't let herself become too overconfident. That little slip-up Light made could have easily cost Ayla her life, so he swears that from now on he will fight with a clear head and won't hesitate anymore so they can all make it out of this alive. All the undead on this floor have been taken care of, so Lena suggests they should head to the second floor, but before that, there's something that has been bothering Light for a while now. They were sent on this mission because 18 adventurers went missing here, and even if they got turned into undead, so far, Light and Lena have already killed way more than 18 undead. The only explanation would be that there were already a ton of undead monsters here, but it makes no sense for the undead to randomly spawn in this mansion. As they head up the staircase, Light notices the painting of Count Montes, and there's something unsettling about it. But even more unsettling is the fact that there's a girl dancing somewhere in the castle, and she's looking forward to all the fun ways she could kill Light. As the three of them run down the hallway, they are suddenly jump-scared by an undead that lunges at them. But before it could infect anyone, Light manages to chop its head off. They may have taken care of that first one, but there are a lot more where that came from, so Light and Lena have a lot of work ahead of them. The undead on this floor seem to be fighting with strategy since they set up this ambush, so he asks Ayla to scan them to see if she can get any useful information. Ayla does as she is told, and she discovers that these undead have been tamed, so someone's ordering them to attack. Just then, Light notices a bunch of threads connected to all the undead, and after scanning those as well, Ayla realizes that those threads are being used to transmit magic power to the undead. That means whoever's behind this must be on the other end of those threads, so after following them for a while, they come across a door where all the threads converge. Light tells everyone to be prepared since they don't know what kind of danger they may face once they head inside, but as he opens the door, all he finds is an empty ballroom. All of a sudden, the girl behind this whole thing appears, and while Light was initially glad to finally see a living person, he can tell that she doesn't seem very friendly. Ayla uses her appraisal skill on her and discovers that Dratina's skill is necromancy, meaning she can control the dead and even use their unique skills as her own. Having her skill appraised so casually was really annoying, so Dratina might just take Ayla out first out of anger. Before anything happens, Light asks Dratina if she was sent here on a mission from the guild, because if so, then there's no reason for them to fight, but the girl denies it and says her only reason for being here is to kill Light. Light doesn't understand why she would be here specifically to kill him because he has never met her before, but Dratina doesn't have a personal grudge against him or anything, she was just given an order to kill him. So that's what she's going to do. Light asks her who gave the order, and it may or may not have been a certain holy sister, but Dratina isn't going to confirm anything. Regardless, if Dratina's goal has always been to kill Light, and she must have come here and killed all those adventurers just to lure him out here. Lena also finds it strange that she has never once heard of a skill as powerful as necromancy, but she doesn't have much time to think about because Dratina is beginning her attack. If Light and Lena work together, it's not that hard to deal with the undead, but Dratina has no interest in Lena, so she lures her away from Light and sets her up to fight the undead versions of her mentors, Bork and Sheila. Lena is horrified to learn that they actually die here, so she is stunned by grief for a moment, but Ayla yells over to warn her that these two are a lot more dangerous than the others. They still have full control over their skills, so Bork can grow claws to increase his attack speed and power, while Sheila can create a mirror image of herself to attack multiple times. Lena is having a hard time keeping up with the undead skills, but thanks to Ayla's warning, she is able to defend herself. However, Dratina is getting sick of all the support Ayla is providing those two, so she intends to kill her first. She sends an undead after Ayla, but this time Light was paying attention, so before Ayla could get hurt, he runs in and grabs her. He's going to keep Ayla safe no matter what, but fighting while protecting her at the same time isn't going to be easy. Dratina keeps sending undead after Light, and the second he takes his eyes off Ayla, Dratina tries to take her out, so he's barely able to keep up. Meanwhile, Lena is still struggling to come to terms with the fact that she has to kill her mentors. When she was first brought to the Holy City, these two were the first people to show her kindness, so she owes them a great deal. Yet now, she finds herself fighting for her life against them. As much as she doesn't want to do it, she knows that she needs to kill them so she can go help Light and Ayla. So she cuts the threads above them to release Dratina's control and prepares her sword to finish the two off. As she does this, she sees a vision of their souls, and they tell her that she doesn't have to feel guilty about finishing them off because it's the right thing to do. So with a heavy heart, Lena raises her sword and cuts the two in half. Meanwhile, Light is still struggling to keep both himself and Ayla safe because no matter how many undead he cuts down, more just keep appearing. Just then, Light realizes that something is off since there's no way Dratina just has an infinite supply of undead. To confirm, he asks Ayla to check if Dratina has the ability to create undead, but from what Ayla can see, Dratina can't do that. She can only control the pre-existing undead. Since that's the case, Light asks Ayla to take a closer look since there has to be some kind of secret behind her army of undead. Dratina is impressed that Light managed to figure out that she has a trick up her sleeve, but she can't let Ayla figure out what her trick is, so she intends to take her out immediately. Light refuses to let that happen, so he destroys the undead that was attacking Ayla. But if Dratina is now targeting Ayla, then he can't leave her side at all, so he comes up with an idea and puts Ayla on his back so he can fight at full capacity. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.